Hey guys, Mechanite here, returning to the long-awaited sequel of MSM monsters with unused element combinations. Starting off, we've got Air and Fairy. This monster I decided to inspire based off a hummingbird. Obviously, fairies in a lot of classic literature, very small and cute, and I think probably the smallest bird that comes to mind for me is a hummingbird. And obviously that fits with the air element, and I do think it works with fairy. And overall, like I said, this video has been long awaited. I'm really excited to finally get it out because the first video got such a good response. If you haven't checked out the first video where I explained my idea for the fan-made island all these monsters reside on, definitely go check that out, it's really important. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. I also gave this monster a few kind of insectoid things with these two sensors on their head, I guess you would call them. And that's inspired based off a hummingbird hawk moth, which is a type of moth that also functions the same as a hummingbird, pollinating plants and such, but it's actually an insect and it just looks extremely close. As for the sound, I went with a flute. I thought it would be able to make it with both its nose and its single leg. And overall, I really like this. I don't actually see it flying very fast, which is probably the most famous thing hummingbirds are known for, but hummingbirds can go through a thing named torpor, where after expending all their energy they become unable to fly, so maybe you could say this is a reference to that. Overall, I really like how this design turned out, and let's have a look at the finished product. Like with the first video in this maybe series, depending on how many episodes you guys want, we're going to be doing two dual elements, 2 triples and 2 quads. For our next dual element, we have air and light. And I said in the first video, I was kind of surprised we didn't get more air element monsters, because for some reason, none of the magical islands actually have the air element, which light and fairy, the two ones we got, I feel like air would fit pretty well with the vibe of those islands. Heck, we now know from the idea that the magical islands were scrapped fire islands, that they were all planned to have the air element on. So what happened? Surely you could have kept it on at least one. But either way, I'm getting sidetracked, and I really like the idea of dual elements that are 3x3s. And overall, I do think I need to work on that. I think in terms of my kind of creature design thing, I like to design bigger creatures, ones that have more of a presence. Whereas in My Singing Monsters, that's not necessarily what they do. And out of this video, 5 of the 6 monsters are 3x3. Only the last one was 2x2. And even though I really like 1x1 monsters, I've literally never designed one before. So it's just one of them things, I guess, something I'm gonna have to work on since I'm gonna be making more MSM videos. But I don't think that's a flaw of all these designs. Just together it kind of is, but each design on their own I really like. This one's named after a saxophone and a seraphim, which is a type of angel, so I went with this biblically accurate angel appearance, and it has these 6 orbs flying around it, which I imagine it would use to make it sound, that being a saxophone. I kind of went with the modern MSM monster mentality of having their instrument not obvious in their design, but you can still imagine them making it. Onto the first triple element of this video. We're going to start by spinning the wheel for which elements we get, and we're going to come out with earth, light, and bone. A really cool combination that I think can be reinterpreted from one of my older monsters. You see, I have a series on YouTube Shorts on this channel called MSM Monsters from Silhouettes, where I take the silhouette of an MSM monster and use it to design a new one. And I really like the idea of continuing with that series and kind of having a backlog of designs that I can reuse and reinterpret whenever I make an MSM video like this. So this is one of them cases. I don't give the monsters names in those videos, so I had to come up with one. But this is the monster that's based off the silhouette of Boggle, the air primordial. And I kind of reinterpreted it as part of the Playbachyderm family, with Pechidna and, who else is there? Cherubble. And obviously this fits with Pechidna. I imagine them being closely related, since they're both earth and bone element monsters, but it's got like this massive earthy, rocky shell that like these birds are in, and I just put percussion for the sound because I imagine it making multiple types. Like, it can make the sound of a drum by either stamping it 6 feet or having the birds peck on its shell, or like a xylophone by pecking on like the bone things on its tail. And overall, I definitely like this design much more than the original, the beta design, so to speak. And for the name, I went with Nesturra, from nest, terror, and turtle, terror being like the word for earth. Overall, like I said, I really like this. I don't know where the idea to give it an extra leg came from. I guess I just made it more like monstery, and I also gave it more like of like a frog appearance. And the original one, like the sound was kind of leaned into being almost like a flute or a wind instrument. But like I said, I went with percussion for the redesigned version. On to the rare segment for today's video. As you guys might remember, in every MSM video I've done so far, well, most of them, we do a rare segment where I choose one of the monsters from the video to give a rare design to. And this monster was kind of a clear candidate for me, because I really like when monsters take, like, if it's multiple monsters or elements, how they swap it around sometimes. Like, Riff is a good example. In its rare version, the guitar becomes the actual common monster, and the monster that's kind of shown on the guitar in the common becomes the actual monster itself. I explained that really poorly, but like, the birds in Nesturra become the main monster, and the actual monster itself becomes like the secondary one making a sound. They gave it an extra pair of legs, I'm not really sure why, and they also changed its shell from stone to wood. The funny thing is, I hadn't realised until now that I gave Humble, the first monster in this video, and the rare Nesturra the same colour scheme, but they're both magical monsters, I guess it kind of works. Onto our second triple, we have Bone, Psychic, and Water. And I really like this combination. I think overall, like, Water and Psychic kind of have some of the same vibes, and this was another opportunity for me to remake one of my older monsters, which I really like doing in this series. I think it's just a cool thing to do in total. I really like redesigning my old drawings, seeing how I've improved. I mean, this one's not that old, to be honest, but it's not a complete design by any stretch, because it was made in my, I think it was 10 seconds versus 30 seconds versus 3 minutes designing an MSM monster short. And originally, it was designed as a Bone Island mythical, but I think with the changes I made, I mean, originally it already fit Water and Bone, but I think with the changes I made, it also fits Psychic a lot better now too. I gave it these kind of like odd tendril things coming from its head. I gave it one arm that's much bigger than the other, because my kind of thought process behind choosing an axolotl was because of their like regeneration. They have the ability to kind of grow back their limbs if they're chopped off, so I thought giving it one really hulked out and kind of almost mutant looking limb would work well for that. And for the sound, I went with a hurdy-gurdy, which is the same as Ermagurdy, which, that's a mouthful. But I think it makes it with its, like, kind of frog pouch and these two kind of tendrils coming off of its back. Overall, I really like how this turned out. It's another triple element that's a 3x3, but I think this kind of works because none of these would be on the actual magical islands if you didn't know they're on my original island, Lighthouse Island, which, like I said at the beginning of the episode, if you want to know more about that, go check out the original video in this maybe series, depending on how much you guys like it. Overall, I really like how this monster turned out, and I hope you do too. On to the first quad of today's video, which I was really excited to do because I like how both the quads in the first episode turned out. And for our elements, we got light, psychic, cold, and earth, and this immediately gave me a good idea. For its name, I'm actually really happy with this one. I think it's my favourite name, possibly ever, for an MSM monster, even though it's so simple, but I'll tell you all at the end. And it kind of gave me the idea of stained glass. It's made of sand, so it's kind of earth, and overall glass kind of gives me earth vibes, but also cold vibes, because ice, things like that. And in terms of psychic and light, I did stained glass. the like kind of really colourful, almost like psychedelic colours, and obviously light windows, glass. I think this is a really cool combination. I think it works. So I kind of made it this big fist coming out of the ground. Obviously that fits in more of the earth element. And I kind of just did this because of the pun with the name. I called it Amethyst, but spelt am-a-fist, because it is amethyst and it is a fist. It's kind of stupid, but I really like it overall, and I think it can make a bunch of sounds. Glass harmonica, kind of the same as geode, the crystal single elemental, but also it could just like maybe snap its fingers, maybe just drum them on itself. Overall, I think there's a bunch of sounds this one could make, kind of similar to Nesturra, and overall I really like how it turned out. I gave it like this shine. Sometimes on some of the shinier monsters in this series, I give them like this kind of glow reflection sort of thing, and I think that worked well for this. Overall, I really like it, and I hope you guys do too. On to the final quad of today's episode. I really like how this one turned out. Maybe not as much as the first episode, but the elements we got are light, psychic, earth, and fairy. This is actually the first quad in this series where, instead of being 2 natural elements and 2 magical elements, this one's 3 magical elements and 1 natural. So I knew that natural element, that being earth, had to be like the main focus of the design. It's kind of like, I imagine it as a secondary earth quad behind Chorister almost. And something about this combination of magical elements also gave me insectoid ideas. Kind of fairy, psychic, things like that. But kind of like in the first episode, I was going to be designing an insect creature that wouldn't be part of the actual insect monster family in my singing monsters. This one would be unique, and I kind of went with a firefly for the light element, and I think it fits in with the others. Overall, it's kind of a random combination. Mountains and fireflies don't have much to do with each other, and maybe this actually would have made more sense as a fire element monster, but I don't really care. Overall, this video and this monster in particular is kind of split for me, because in this video I think I like it overall, like on average, more than the first. But I like the quads in the first more, and maybe even some of the other monsters. I think I definitely like the dual elementals better in this. The triples could go either way, and I think I like the quads better in this. So overall, it's pretty evened out, but who knows? Maybe I could make my favourite monsters of this whole series if you guys like this video enough to ask for a part 3. Anyway, that's going to be it for this drawing. I hope you guys enjoy, and for the sound of this monster, I went with an overdriven guitar, which is the same one as Sand's song in Undertale, and overall, I think this monster's like kind of glowy, like abdomen, thorax, I don't know insect terminology, glowing up and making the same sounds as Sans. I don't know, that's just pretty funny to me.